The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, dedicated to creating access to financial well-being for local people, businesses, and communities. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar in Hatfield, offering personalized solar energy solutions and ongoing customer care, proudly serving communities throughout the Pioneer Valley. Northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. It's Massachusetts Farm to School Month, so later in the show we'll hear from folks facilitating the implementation of that program in Western Mass, Abby Getman-Skillicorn and Mistel Hanna with Claire Morneau of CISA.
And delve into the pages of a novel about a family's continued evolution against a backdrop that is very firmly Western Mass as we speak with author Catherine Newman about her latest book, Wreck.
First, we continue our talks with each of the three folks in the running for the East Hampton mayoral seat.
Our second candidate for East Hampton has had a front row seat to the previous administration.
This week, we're speaking with candidates for East Hampton mayor, and the second candidate we're speaking with was the first out of the gate to announce, Lindsay Sekula. Her website says she's running for mayor to continue building a stronger, more inclusive East Hampton.
She says as a mom, neighbor, and public servant with years of experience working inside City Hall, she says she will be ready to lead on day one, listening, supporting families, advancing smart growth, and ensuring every resident feels heard, valued, and represented in their future.
For over a decade, she worked as an early childhood educator, leading toddler and preschool classrooms. She later transitioned into healthcare, where she spent 10 years at Bay State Health, serving as both a practice associate and insurance specialist, helping families navigate complex healthcare systems. And in 2018, she became executive assistant to Mayor Nicole LaChapelle. Lindsay Sekula joins us now. Welcome to the Fabulous 413, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me on.
You were the first one out of the gate to announce for mayor when Mayor Nicole LaChapelle said she would not be seeking re-election.
I assume it would be because you were her executive assistant and would know that she was leaving office.
Yeah, you got a little bit of an advantage inside baseball.
Well, surprise, I found out when the public found out.
Oh.
I actually went into her office one day to schedule her for a trip, and she looked at me and she said, I can't do this anymore. I got to let you know. Thursday, I'm letting the public know. Yeah, it happened pretty simultaneously. So I didn't find out first. I have been deeply committed to my work in East Hampton over the last 7 years as executive assistant. And this is my home where my husband and I have purchased our first home, where we're choosing to raise our family. And so when she had announced that she was stepping down, I also had already been having conversations with my family, with members of the public, with other elected officials about what life looks like moving forward. And with my commitment to East Hampton already, it felt like the right time to take that commitment to a higher level.
You had 10 years as an educator and then 10 years in the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. So what made you want to enter into the world of politics after having two nice careers in two different fields and now a totally different third field?
So working in corporate, I didn't feel connected to human beings, to my community. You know, I was working the corporate ladder at Bay State and it wasn't fulfilling to me. Mm-hmm. And working in early childhood education spoke to my heart so deeply. Unfortunately, we don't pay teachers enough.
Yeah.
So there's a disconnect between all of them, right? I have a passion for community, serving families, and being around children. I also have a desire, like every other individual on this planet, to earn income to survive. So there's a middle road there, and it's in public service. And that's what brought me to the city.
If you could get the mayor's salary to be an early childhood educator, which one would you choose?
Early childhood educator.
Wow, interesting.
I feel like that's an
honest
easy
answer.
I feel like that's a relatively easy choice.
No, some people love politics.
Right,
I mean, they love running for office. They love being an elected official.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting that you said Mayor Nicole LaChapelle, and we shouldn't speak out of school about her as she's not here, but said she can't do it anymore. So you must have been, privy to the kinds of pressures that the mayor was having that made her say, I don't want to do it anymore. She's now the head of Department of Conservation and Recreation. She's been a guest on this show many times. But after observing that, what made you say, like, well, hell, I'll do it?
I guess I just thrive in chaos. It's really my strong suit. It was a learning experience, right? So I learned by serving in the office day to day with our staff, serving the public, what works. And I also saw what doesn't work for our community. And that's really a part of my campaign moving forward. It's rooted in constituent listening and in accessibility and transparency. So seeing how the former administration thrived and also their downfalls. And that's how I'm going to focus on making East Hampton stronger.
You're the only non-council member running. Why the mayoral seat instead of trying to lead the council?
There's a stark difference between the legislative and executive branches of our government. And I am experienced in the executive branch, and I know how to take theories and make them into practices and implementation. I've worked daily and annually on our city budget, not just the person who votes on them. So everything that we're doing inside of the executive branch, we're bringing forward to the legislative to rubber stamp it. And I think that experience matters because we're living in times where things don't feel stable. NEPM feels that, right? You know, we have
I don't know what you're talking
I don't know.
We have a federal administration and sometimes even our state government and local government that we don't feel stability. And I can bring stability and continuity in a time that feels very unstable.
You did mention that you work hard on a budget and bring it to the legislature, to the council, to rubber stamp it. Do you believe that that is the role of the council, or should the council be sort of a back and forth relationship with the executive branch?
1,000%. I appreciate you bringing that up. So nix rubber stamp and say that they are a check and balance to the mayor. And it's really their responsibility to ensure that the balanced budget I'm bringing forward every year is exactly that. And we're actually having some pretty contentious conversations between school committee, city council, and the mayor's office right now about...
Because there's a wild election for that, too, that's so wild in
There
both
is.
Northampton and East Hampton. We're going to ignore it. It would be the entirety of our show every day.
It would be. It would be. But there's some contentious conversation right now about adoption of MGL 329, something like that.
Mass general law.
Yeah,
Right.
where it gives the council the authority with a 2/3 vote to increase a school budget, whereas right now the council's only purview with a mayor's budget is to decrease that. So if this were to be adopted, it would give the city council more power and authority to be a check and balance to the mayor's office and the budget we bring forward every year.
And do you think that's good or bad?
I've heard both sides of this. I'm feeling a little torn on it. I think that I've heard our internal finance team, our treasurers, our auditors, and I've listened to department head staff who also say, we want the council to be able to give us more, and how do you cut from here? And it's making people a little nervous. But I also feel like this isn't a power grab. This is exactly that opportunity to work collaboratively with different branches of government and with different staff and rely on the experience of both our school committee, our city council, and our mayor to work together. And every year I'm going to bring forward a balanced budget that supports our schools as well as the overall fiscal health of the city. And that commitment doesn't change with who has the authority to increase or decrease that budget.
We're speaking with Lindsay Sekula, who is a candidate for mayor of East Hampton. This week, we're talking with all the candidates for mayor of East Hampton. It was going to be 4. Now it's 3. And you are number 2, although you were number 1 out of the gate.
More numbers, more numbers.
Yeah. I know you were a part of Leadership Pioneer Valley and Suffolk University Leadership Program. And this has, maybe less to do with you specifically and more to do with the overall movement of women in politics, especially in the Commonwealth. But you talk about both of those programs and what they meant to you in your movement away from early childhood education and the healthcare system into the world of politics.
Absolutely. That professional development was monumental to my experience with East Hampton and public service. Through Leadership Pioneer Valley, I was the cohort that graduated during COVID, so we all got our certificates in the car afterwards. There was no contact.
Talk a little bit about what that is, because I think maybe people don't even know.
Yeah, it's a cohort of leaders across the Pioneer Valley that you submit your application, and only 25 people get accepted each cohort, and you pick certain areas of interest to do your final report on. And my focus was on housing in the Pioneer Valley and creative solutions. We actually worked with Holyoke One and talked about modular homes that could be brought to Holyoke. So we visited lots of different communities throughout the Pioneer Valley and talked about their strengths and their weaknesses and how we as local leaders can help improve.
And so many people that go through that program end up climbing the
They
ranks
do.
into really powerful positions
They
in the
do.
area.
Well, you did your project on housing, but how does that project affect what you see in East Hampton?
Housing is a national crisis right now. We're seeing it in every municipality. And that experience helped me to think outside of the box for how we talk about housing. I've also lived housing insecurity. I lived in federal subsidized housing for over 10 years as a single mother raising my kids. And navigating those complexities it's a strength of mine now. And being able to say that we're not just pushing housing. We don't want to just overdevelop. We want to make sure we're doing smart growth in East Hampton. So we have some really great projects coming up that look at properties that honor open space as well as space to provide housing for humans. So we're honoring animal housing, we're honoring human housing, and we're looking at smart growth. We've also been having conversations about accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and Airbnbs, and how we change our zoning and ordinances to accommodate East Hampton's growth.
The East Hampton's growth has been phenomenal to watch. I mentioned with candidate Salem Derby that for a long time it was the notion that East Hampton is the next Northampton.
No.
East Hampton is already kind of gone in the direction that Northampton was before, where it was a lot of cool arts and culture and a little bit too expensive for people to live. East Hampton is there now. What can be done to kind of maintain the balance of being a cool artsy place where people want to come, but also still be affordable?
Yeah, I think affordability is going to be a difficult conversation to have moving forward. There are things that we would like to see in place, like rent stabilization, which I've advocated for on both the state and local level. I've worked with Springfield No One Leaves to help us get some rent stabilization advocacy in East Hampton and across the Pioneer Valley in Massachusetts. I had a great conversation the other day with a constituent where I'm explaining that doesn't just mean apartments. Housing stabilization, rent stabilization, it means we're looking at our arts and culture. We had a lot of controversy with One Cottage Street where artists had to leave the building because their rent skyrocketed. So when we're talking about rent stabilization, we're talking about these situations as well, not just tenants, not just apartments. We have to look broader too. I've heard complaints about seniors not being able to afford to continue living there. And I think these, again, creative housing ideas where we're providing zoning for ADUs and Airbnbs and other possibilities will help stabilize that.
We're speaking with Lindsay Sekula, candidate for mayor of East Hampton. Election day is Tuesday, November 4th. You were the executive assistant to Mayor Nicole LaChapelle, who stepped down and then went to go lead the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and then appointed, as per charter of the city of East Hampton, Salem Derby into the role as acting mayor. You are now executive assistant to Salem Derby, who's acting mayor, who is also running for mayor.
How's that working out for you?
Yeah, how's that working out for you?
I was honored to have interim Mayor Derby's full support, and then very surprised to find out he had pulled papers while I was on vacation. So conversations have shifted, but this is a tough question to answer.
Well, don't worry, we asked him too.
The thing is, about this race is that I genuinely don't think we've ever seen a mayoral race where the three candidates were as closely tied in their occupation as this particular one.
Yeah, I jokingly said that it would be like if Khalees and I both ran for mayor.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You don't see this happen.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic. What I can say is that since the interim mayor works for the school departments full time during the day, we're not in the office at the same time together. He comes in briefly in the morning to sign off on some things, and then he heads off to school for the day. So I'm still working in the office, handling the day-to-day, managing the staff, and making sure everything moves forward. And we have minimal interaction, but the interactions we have are kind. It's been a little difficult, but I also plan on using some well-earned vacation time, and then the last week leading up to the election as well. So, we'll just keep doing our thing.
Let this be a reminder to everybody with vacation time that the end of year is coming up. Use those days before you lose them.
Yes, right.
Yes.
One of the things that you ran out with as a platform was leadership that doesn't need a transition. The idea being you're the executive assistant to the mayor, you know how things run, and then now there's the person who is acting mayor running against you. Does that change your game plan here, or do you still does he have an advantage of you with leadership that doesn't need a transition as he is currently the mayor?
Well, I would say that I'm still running on there is no transition needed.
Yeah.
And I am the person who understands the day-to-day operations of the office. I know the players, I know the staff. And while you have the title of an interim mayorship, you still don't have the experience of that executive day-to-day operations. Whoever comes into office, if it's not me, they're going to need me. They're going to need me to say, this is the day we write the budget letter. This is the day we do this. This is when we do staff meetings. This is when we meet here. This is who we contact for that. So to say you're more qualified than me, then I assume you will no longer need an assistant. Or I don't know how that works for them moving forward, because I truly don't need a transition plan on day one. I know that I'm going to create a leadership meeting with my staff. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk. I know exactly the date the budget letter needs to be written, distributed, and printed in the press. I know the operations. That doesn't change.
JT Terrell, who is a counselor in East Hampton and who is also running for mayor and who will be on tomorrow's show, is running sort of on the platform of change. So what do you make of what he thinks needs to be changed, and how do you respond? As you're saying no transition plan, you're basically saying no change.
Sure. I think no transition plan and no change are
two different things.
They're very different things.
Do you want to bring change, or do you want to continue sort of in the legacy of Nicole LaChapelle?
I think there absolutely needs to be change.
Uh-huh.
So I've been out knocking doors all summer long, and I have been holding listening sessions and really focused times with everyone in East Hampton. And one of the biggest things I've heard is there's a lack of transparency and there's a lack of accountability and accessibility in our office, that they didn't feel like they were getting well informed from our previous administration. They weren't able to access the mayor in that way. So yeah, I think change needs to happen. I think we need a mayor that is accessible and thinks about ways to improve communication between government and public. And I'm ready to do that. I have talked on the campaign trail about having open town hall meetings where this isn't city council. You don't have to talk in front of a camera. You don't have to get up and have a script for it. Meet me at Marigold Cafe. Let's have coffee. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Hold me accountable, or tell me what you really like about East Hampton. Let's keep building on that. When I talk about no transition, it's a time for steady momentum and leadership moving forward. It's not a time to change that. The change I think we all want to see is having an open and accessible government.
We're speaking with Lindsay Sekula, who's a candidate for mayor of East Hampton. And again, the election day is Tuesday, November 4th. We've talked about some of the issues in your platform. We've talked about schools. But one of the things that you've done is modernize the city's digital output, the city's website. Every time we get a press release from the city of East Hampton, it's signed by Lindsay Sekula. In what areas do you think there needs to be better improvement that you'd like to work on if you were mayor in modernizing the city's ability to communicate through the digital platforms?
So in 2021, I launched our new city website, which I created. I worked on hard over 17 months, and we launched that. And I thought it was the best thing ever. And did you know technology changes every year?
Yeah.
Every 3 months.
Maybe Windows upgrades?
We're wrestling with that here.
It changes every 3 months.
Right. So I thought this was great because I now have a way for people to sign up for news flashes and get information that they want to hear. They get to see about when we have city meetings. You get to sign up for what meetings are important to you. And those still remain. We have a request tracker where you can report problems to either DPW or the mayor's office. But we're missing language components. We're missing screen reading capabilities. So I have, over the last year, been working on a rebrand with our technology department that's actually making our website even more accessible, where we're going to have a chat bot that can do multi-language communication. So if English isn't your first language, you can read our website in Spanish or whatever language works for you. And so making accessibility present for the times is important to me, and I'm committed to continuing that moving forward.
What is the magic behind how well East Hampton is able to keep its streets generally plowed? East Hampton.
You get high marks for good plowing.
Yes.
Okay.
Like it's Western Mass. Not that we have a lot of snow anymore, but one of the things I remember the most about East Hampton is how well and how I could tell when I'd hit East Hampton because the streets were plowed.
We have an amazing DPW team and a director that is well informed on how to do their job. They served in public works long before becoming a director too. But I will say I might be one of those residents that calls him after every snowstorm and says,
I lived on Ferry Street, so they had to keep my street plowed.
I'm on a side street, and I feel like they're always 4 feet away from where I need them to plow. And I have a teenager who drives, and we can't all fit in the driveway. So I might be one of the residents that still complains about that. But no, I think they work very diligently. They certainly don't get enough credit for the work they do. I have seen that firsthand. And let's bake them some cookies this year during a snowstorm to say thank you.
If we have a snowstorm at all. You always have to close Mount Tom Road, too. That's the other thing East Hampton always does. Anytime it snows, Mount Tom Road closed, which is good and safe, because that's a dangerous place to drive when it's slippery. Lindsay Sekula, East Hampton candidate for mayor, current executive assistant to the acting mayor, Salem Derby, who is also running for mayor, former executive assistant to the former mayor, Nicole LaChapelle. One of the amazing things about democracy in East Hampton is ranked choice voting. I'm going to give you the hard question first. I gave Salem the option to pick which one he wanted, hard or easy, first or second, but I already tipped my hand here.
You did.
If you have to rank choice candidates for mayor, rank choice them.
Are you asking me to rank the...
Yeah, yes.
Oh, wow. Wait, did Salem answer this?
Yes.
He did.
Oh, wow. Okay. Obviously, everyone needs to and is going to vote me one.
Okay.
I hope to earn the most first votes. And I guess I honestly would rank interim mayor Derby second, and then I would rank our opponent, JT Terrell, third.
The easy question, Lindsay Sekula, what is your go-to order at Captain Jack's Roadside Shack, the best seafood in Western Mass, or maybe the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Shameless plug.
I will say on the East Coast, because we went to Maine this year, my family, for our annual Maine trip, and we were on a hunt to find a lobster roll that compared to Captain Jack's, and we could not do it.
I agree with this, and I will just say, again, full disclosure, I'd go to Cape Cod, I'd get fried clams, and I'd be like, why do the clams right on the coast taste worse than Captain Jack's? And he explained to me, Kevin from Captain Jack's, he said, because I'm a chef, I change my oil every day, and I make my own batter, and those kids in the Cape Cod clam shacks are just high school kids who are looking to hook up.
Well, the kids at Captain Jack's may be different.
Oh, yeah. He's trained them
but
all.
Amazing. But they are trained
Yeah.
well and amazing. And Kevin is amazing. And it's the lobster roll cold with a side of fries and a half and half.
How was the talk at Captain Jack's? We didn't get to do this.
We thought about trying to cover it.
One of the cool things about Captain Jack's, beyond having really great seafood in general, I'm a scallop roll girl myself. I'm not into lobster. Sorry, everybody. I'm a bad New Englander. I also don't like clams. But one of the things that he got to do politically was like just have the kind of open town meetings with each of the candidates at Captain Jack's in East Hampton. How did that go? How did that feel being amongst the people in a way that you didn't necessarily have to go door to door for?
It felt like much of my campaign. So I've had a lot of local businesses hosting me. I just had an event last Saturday at the Marigold Theater. I've had support from local restaurants and Dry Humor and other places throughout East Hampton. So very honored that our community comes together in a time like this to allow everyone a voice. You know, I have been given the privilege of having this microphone, and I take it very seriously. So having the opportunity and the collaboration of our local businesses to support our democracy is incredible. So it felt great, and I loved having that opportunity to be at that location as well as many others throughout East Hampton.
Lindsay Sekula, candidate for mayor of East Hampton, 2 of the 3 that we will speak to this week on the show. Election day is Tuesday, November 4th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Oh, our pleasure. Tomorrow we'll meet the final candidate in the running for mayor of East Hampton, current councilor at large JT Terrell.
We'll hear about Mass Farm to School Month and get to taste some of the snacks hitting a school near you.
After we meet a Western Mass family in the pages of Catherine Newman's new novel Wreck, which will get celebrated in South Hadley next week.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Real Pickles, a worker-owned cooperative in Greenfield producing organic fermented vegetables sourced from Northeast farms. More information at realpickles.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass Amherst School of Public Policy, offering in-person and online graduate programs in public policy and data analytics. Admissions now open at umass.edu/SPP.
Amherst author Catherine Newman is back with a new novel, Wreck, a follow-up to last summer's New York Times bestselling novel, Sandwich, which Ann Patchett called joy in book form.
Wreck is receiving early praise from all comers of the book world, hitting fall must-read lists from People magazine to Oprah Daily. In a starred review, Kirkus calls it a heartbreaking, laugh-provoking, and absolutely Efron-esque look at the beauty and fragility of everyday life.
Told with Catherine Newman's signature warmth, wit, and wisdom, Wreck is a novel about the body and its betrayals, about being the strong one even when you're falling apart, and about the moral complexity of loving your children while reckoning with their choices.
Catherine will be kicking off her month-long book tour at a hometown event at the First Congregational Church in South Hadley, hosted by Odyssey Books on Tuesday, October 28th.
And Catherine Newman joins us now. Thanks for coming, Catherine Newman.
Thanks for having me.
Hello.
Hello.
You were on episode 2 of the Fabulous 413, I believe, as we did I did a polar plunge in Northampton, which is something that you do and something that shows up in your new novel, Wreck.
It's true.
I would bring us back to that clip, but that was the first time management at NEPM got mad at me because of your F words, that they didn't like how I didn't bleep out enough of the F-bombs.
Oh,
so we're going to keep making F-bombs this time and see if they have now grown more accustomed to me on episode 600 versus episode 2. And guess what? Answer? No.
To our credit, it was because of the way they had been bleeped out.
I like so that you know what the swear is.
Of course.
And then you're still not making everybody knows what you're saying no matter what. So you might as well make it sound a little sweary.
And then it's funny.
It's funnier.
I know.
Thank you, New York Times best-selling author Catherine Newman, for validating my creative choices. The other thing about this book, Rec, I was going to say, do you have a part that you read for the book to kind of give us a flavor?
I haven't talked that much about it. So I don't know. Is there,
I found one.
Good. Tell me.
Read the last paragraph on page 67.
Okay. Life is so short, isn't it? My 92-year-old father is asleep in the shed, and our daughter is out in the dark in a car. Our son is in New York City, probably dangling drunk from the tippy top of the Empire State Building. Miles Zapf is dead. His mother is grieving. Somewhere a train conductor must be studying his own face in the mirror for clues. My body is damaged and leaking and maybe attacking itself for no reason, or for some reason it hasn't yet divulged. What is there really besides disentangling myself from this man so that I can pull from my lingerie drawer? I can't believe you picked this.
Well, I mean...
Hang on. I'm getting there.
Okay.
The thigh-high striped tube socks and the slinky, strappy nightgown, the one emblazoned with the logo of his favorite hockey team, the St. Louis Blues. Don't look, I say. I'm stuffed with popcorn and dressed like a cross between a goalie and a cheerleader, but when I turn back to the bed, Nick opens his eyes to watch me pull my hair into a high ponytail. That's my girl, he says, his breath catching, and he opens his arms.
I love that because it says so many things about what happened in this book and gives a good example of how this book is written and the family that is depicted in this new novel, Rec.
One thing I found really interesting in reading it is that it read way more like memoir than like a novel, which is a really cool, interesting choice. And I'm assuming that Sandwich worked the same way. But talk about writing in that particular style.
I think it's called autofiction, even though that sounds so dirty. But
autoerotic fiction. I've heard about that.
Like Galatea, all of the AI weird romantasy apps.
3 minutes in, off the rails already.
So autofiction, which is like autobiographical fiction. So that is the genre this is. It is autobiographical fiction. And I think because the characters are so taken from my life, that's why it feels so much like that. So even if there are things happening that haven't happened in real life, I think the characters are so known to me that I always know what everyone would say.
It's interesting because I've followed your career for a long time, and you did start out writing memoirs. Oh, I feel like our lives parallel because your kids are about the same age as my kids. So when we had young kids, my wife or sister-in-law would always send me a Catherine Newman book or article if they wanted me to both laugh and definitely then end up crying my eyes out, which happens all the time. But then you made Sandwich, which I also read and I love because I love the Cape, and it was fun being on vacation with your family there because I know your real family. I can't not read Rec or Sandwich and think this is just Catherine Newman and her husband, who happens to be in the other room, but who you didn't want to come in here, who I would have asked lots of questions about how much of this is really him. So talk about that decision to stop exploiting your actual family like I also did on the radio with my young children at the time.
Exploiting your actual
and exploit them using fiction.
I know, isn't it great?
It is.
Take a step aside and continue exploiting them without their names.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I know. It's so complicated because the thing about writing memoir is it all has to be true.
Yeah.
And so besides that, you run up against the limits of what's interesting about that. You also just run up against everybody's truths that aren't yours. I feel like autofiction for me has been kind of the best of both worlds, that I get to create these characters that I know really well because they're based on people I love, and I get to make stuff up.
Rocky is sort of the main character of both Sandwich and Rec, and is basically you, Catherine Newman. But what is something about Rocky that is diametrically opposed to the real Catherine Newman? Or is there nothing? Is it just...
diametrically opposed?
Like, this is something you would absolutely never, ever do.
I mean, one thing in my first novel, which also was a narrator based on me, that book was We All Want Impossible Things. sometimes other people made food. And when my son read that book, he said the only thing I didn't believe was the fact that sometimes someone other than you cooked. So anytime someone other than me makes food, that's probably kind of implausible.
But basically everything else in the book.
I mean, there's lots of stuff that's not true. There's just not a way Rocky is that's like radically different from me. I don't think.
I also love that at the end, you give acknowledgments to some of the specific anecdotes that are woven into this family that happen through the context of the family in the book, but maybe happened to other families. So that helped me to clarify a little bit about differentiating fact from fiction in autofiction, which is my new favorite genre, especially of Catherine Newman books, with the new book, Wreck, which will be celebrated at the Odyssey Bookshop, through the Odyssey Bookshop at the First Congregational Church in South Hadley, Tuesday, October 28th.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about this and having it be so closely tied to this family's life, and now I guess like autofiction, which I now know about also.
We're all learning together.
Is that there's an end without distinct resolution. There isn't like a tidy bow end to this book. I feel like that's a really interesting choice too. Like life often goes on and there isn't necessarily an end to like where you are until like death comes for you. Talk about the way you decided to resolve this without giving things away, Catherine Newman.
All right, okay, I can do that. I'm on it. I think that question, which is such a good question, points to kind of what the book's about, which is I do think if there's a character arc, and it's obviously very slight with Rocky. Like, what does she learn? Not much. But I feel like she's learning to live with uncertainty. And the book, to some extent, is about that everyone in your life is going to die, and you don't really know when, usually. And so you have this fundamental uncertainty, right? That I would call that almost the foundational uncertainty of your life. And you can't wait for resolution. You will miss everything. You can't just want to know what's going to happen because you don't know. And so I think some of the lack of closure is Rocky just learning to hold possibilities in her open hands.
I don't want to spoil too much, but this is about the book that came out before. Did you actually lose a parent between the writing of Sandwich and this?
Nope.
Because you write it really well as somebody who's about to lose my first parent. So this has been really good. The way that I process sadness often, and heavy topics too, fascism, is through the means of art and creativity, and in this case, fiction. But it feels very real. So I'm glad for you that it didn't.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, is all I'll say. But I think grief is the thing I imagine. I've lived through it and I imagine it so preemptively.
I tell people all the time, I have pre-grieved you, which is why I'm not overly emotional right now. And I question, for me, whether that is healthy or not. Has it been healthy for you as an individual when you actually do lose somebody to just always assume everybody's dead already, which is kind of how I operate?
I like that health is the arbiter.
Mental health.
I mean, no, of course not. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think any of that is healthy. It's just what I do.
Okay.
Like, that is just how I live.
Yeah.
I think what I am is really weirdly superstitious. And part of the, like, fantasy that I control more stuff than I control is I always think if I'm not afraid to look at death, like, right in the face, that I'll be spared for, like, another minute, that the people I love will stay alive, like, another day because I didn't turn away. That's just between us.
and everybody listening on the radio.
Superstition, it's so messed up. Anything you do that's based on a fantasy that your actions control uncontrollable outcomes, that's just like the definition of not healthy.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing about this book is that, like, in that grief, like, there are two griefs. There's multiple grieving. The grief that Rocky has for herself and this weird diagnosis. This grief that she's tangential to with the death of this kid in the community. Her grief around, like, her children finding kind of their own orbits and how connected she is to that, too. And then with her dad, who lives with them and who is, having already lost a parent, now it feels like she's trying to hold even tighter on to him. So it's interesting to see like those different shades of grief all show up at the same time and how differently they get processed by this one woman.
Love it. Thank you. I know. I mean, I feel like that's like one of the best descriptions of the book I've heard. I do think that is what the book's about.
And the book is called Wreck. It's a novel by Amherst author Catherine Newman. It's a sequel to Sandwich, which came out last summer, is a great summer read. And this maybe, if you're doing it by the seasons, which why would you, is a good fall/winter read.
When everything is dying, so we grieve anyway. We
Yeah.
grieve the loss of the sun.
Right. And one of the things that we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation is that you have incorporated so much of your life into these novels, including your kids, who were chronicled in memoir form when they were young. How do the kids, Ben and Bertie, who are, I think, for parents of my age, famous children because of you, how do they like this transition personally? Do they prefer to be fictionalized, or do they look back on those books now and be like, "Oh, Mom used to talk about me in her books all the time"?
They've been remarkably kind of sanguine about all of it. Bertie went through a phase as a teenager of like reading everything I'd ever written about them and kind of loved it. The fiction, I know this sounds like so implausible, but they genuinely understand that these books are just total love letters to them and have loved them. I think Bertie, because her character is so funny, like she loves that. I'm mostly just like quoting some of her best lines. So she's like, okay, like it. And then I don't know, Ben is so like, I picked his brain a ton to write this book, and he was so generous. And it's not like I'm a mystery to him. He knows I'm going to write down everything he says. So, like, I'm not, that's not like a secret. I don't know. The kids are so generous that I worry there's like some other shoe that's going to drop. But maybe it'll just drop privately in therapy, and I won't even need to hear about it.
You write a lot about food as well. And this may be divulging too much, or there may not be an answer to this, but there's a magic that comes when something is both sweet and salty. And I mentioned that when I get a writing from Catherine Newman, I am going to laugh, and then I am going to cry.
Love that.
Is there a method to that makes it work? Like peanut butter and chocolate, boom, it's going to be delicious to most people. Is there a way that you could teach another writer how to write like this? Or is that asking for you to give us your secret ingredients?
No, I mean, that's so nice. And I love that. The sweet and salty, like that is the thing that you can't stop eating. Kettle corn.
Yeah.
E.g.
Chocolate covered pretzels.
Totally. Dipping
right.
French fries in like a Frosty.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So that, I think that's just like a worldview, honestly, that loving to laugh and then like the violin sawing away in the background because everybody's dying.
Yeah.
So I think if that's your worldview, probably that's how you would write,
So there's no secret to it. There's no recipe you can say A plus B equals crying my eyes out.
And I'm laughing. I feel like it's just that. It's not a mystery to us, Monty, that we're so alike in so many ways. I feel like that, like, inclination to laugh, like wanting to laugh, and then also just the preciousness of the everyday. I think we both do that.
Talk about the importance of food in this book, because there's so much food throughout this novel.
I mean, I'm like a food person, and making food is definitely the way I take care of the people I love. Like, if you come over and then you eat, then I feel like I have this sense of resolution, like I have done the thing I set out to do, which is feed you at every turn. So that's the food thing. It's easy to write about. It's usually like a little respite from writing about something more challenging. And I've written a lot about food, so it's familiar. And then I think this is the secret other reason is if you're hating the book or bored, but you like food, you'll like every few pages, there'll be something where you're like, okay, I didn't mind the part about the sandwich.
It's like a light snack on the journey.
Yeah, just like that. Or it's like, well, the book was terrible, but that Thanksgiving thing, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to try that recipe. It's not a recipe book. It is a novel. It's called Wreck. And we also mentioned that you cold plunge in real life and that the cold plunging makes its way into this novel. Are you still cold plunging? as I did with you one time at the very beginning of this show's run.
And never again.
And never again. And if so, why and how has it helped you?
Yeah.
Or has it continued to help you since you've started doing it?
Yes, I'm still cold plunging, mostly to look at all my hot friends in their swimsuits.
That's why I went.
Yeah, right? Like, it's so worth it. At 50-year-old women in their swimsuits, there is literally nothing I'd rather look at. Autofiction. It's so restorative. It's so like, you're alive. Always you're alive. Like that cold water, whatever the brain chemicals are, the endorphins, all of it. I feel so alive. And I just love it. I don't know, the fear and then the exhilaration. And yeah, it's great. It's so good.
So you started a memoir and you've taken a step out into autofiction, which is kind of memoir adjacent. Do you think that you'll continue going further into fiction, or is the appeal of keeping your family within the pages too great to leave behind?
Oh, like, am I going to write more memoir? Never.
Oh, wow.
I think I'm never going to write memoir again. I feel like fiction is the most honest you can be on the page. It's like if you're honest in memoir, there's some piece of it you're leaving out that might make the whole thing a little bit confusing because you just can't say every single thing because other people's stories are in the mix. I feel like fiction, even if you're making something up to get at the thing you're trying to get at, you can always get at it. So I'm like so converted.
Is this the last we're going to see of Rocky and her family, or should we expect Rocky 3?
Oh my God, that's so
Where she'll fight Mr. T.
I was it's like where Mr. T moves into the neighborhood and they hatch a plan to like figure out what's going on with the neighborhood turkeys.
Oh my God, what if there were a third book and we called it Rocky 3? Come on!
You'd get sued by Paramount.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm not sure. I'm taking a lot of notes about caretaking. That's all I'll say for now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Life continues apace, as you know. So I'm not totally sure. I don't know what's next.
Meanwhile.
Right? Holding uncertainty. There we are. Holding uncertainty.
You don't want to jinx it.
That's
Superstition.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, if you enjoyed Sandwich, you will love Wreck because it's a continuation of the saga of that family. If you didn't read Sandwich, I think you will still love Wreck.
Yeah.
It feels very Western Massey, very Amhersty, and it is written with Catherine Newman's very distinctive style, despite what Kirkus Books or whoever said comparing you to Nora Ephron. Whatever. You're Catherine Newman to me, and it's super funny and super sad in the best sweet and salty way.
I definitely agree with Ephron-esque.
Yeah.
And I didn't read Sandwich, and I read this, and I really liked it, despite kind of not enjoying any of the actual characters. I don't think I liked any of the characters.
You didn't want to hang out with any of the people in the book?
Not really, but I really liked this book.
This is like a late development in the conversation. Okay.
But I really enjoyed this book. I don't know if I actually like any of these people.
I like them because of how quirky they are, but I also know you and your family, so maybe that's why I like it more. If you know Catherine Newman, you'll love the book. If you don't, talk to Khalees.
Well, no, I liked this book quite a bit. I just don't know if I would hang out with anybody that it was about.
That's a very interesting take on the
bold.
book. Very bold.
Bold.
I love it.
To a person who admits it's autofiction. I love it, right? It's like, yeah, I didn't like.
She liked the book,
No,
Yeah.
I
but she
really
doesn't like
enjoyed
you,
the
is what
book.
she's saying.
Just me as a person. But the book.
It's inspired by you, but it's not you.
The book is called Wreck, and that's what just happened to this interview. No.
Oh, no.
It's a novel by Catherine Newman, who lives in Amherst. There will be a celebration of this book at First Congregational Church in South Hadley, hosted by the Odyssey Bookshop on Tuesday, October 28th.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
And now, speaking of food, to hear how young folks are or can be eating better in their schools.
We speak with Abby Getman-Skillicorn, Mistel Hanna, and Claire Morna of Mass Farm to School Month.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Eastworks, 500,000 square feet dedicated to artists, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits where community happens. Learn more at eastworks.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Comfort Bagel, scratch-made artisan sourdough bagels, spreads, and sandwiches for breakfast or lunch on Main Street in Westfield and at their new location in Holyoke at 92 Race Street. ComfortBagel.com.
I brought you some snacks.
Oh, okay.
Let's break them out.
Yeah, snacks!
Since we're talking about school stuff, snacks seem like super appropriate. It's snack time at school here.
Field pea fritter, made at the Commonwealth Kitchen.
And Commonwealth Kitchen is an incubator in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston, and they are an incubator business.
Does it mean they raise baby chicks?
I'm so sorry. So the Commonwealth Kitchen is a business incubator in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston.
Where I was born.
Where a lot of my family still currently lives and where I grew up.
So they have been working on this. The field pea fritter is a product that is utilizing northeast grown field peas, which are normally a cover crop that are, turned back into the soil. But instead of being only for cover crop, they're harvested and combined and then used in lieu of a chickpea in order to make this falafel fritter that is using northeast grown foods and manufactured here in Massachusetts for schools.
Let's eat one, and
So
then we'll
give
talk
it a
about what
try.
we're talking about.
They're great cold. They're great warm. We use it as a falafel in our school meals. And then we also put them on our salad bar as a protein option for our vegans. They're also gluten-free.
These are awesome.
They're awesome.
They
I
are
want
delicious.
you put a little tahini on this. You wouldn't know any difference between this and any. Did you bring tahini?
No, actually, because we don't serve anything with tahini in on our public schools because of sesame allergies. So we actually make our own hummus using sun butter. And so I brought you some of our fresh Hampton hummus.
Now I feel bad because I'm kind of double dipping because I already took a bite
that
out of
too.
this.
So
But
I'm just going to use the part I didn't bite.
You're fine.
And I would say Mistel, as the nutrition director in Northampton, is one of many of the nutrition directors around the state that are really keening into the number of allergens that are really prevalent and coming up with creative ways to make sure that all kids are able to eat school food safely. We have universal free meals in Massachusetts, and we're seeing that opportunity really allow schools to elevate the amount of local foods that they're purchasing as well.
well, now that we've stuffed our faces with field pea falafel here, let's get down to the real work of what we're here to talk about. It's time for another Local Hero Spotlight with Claire Morneau from CISA and a returning guest, Abby Getman-Skillicorn, who is the Special Projects Manager for Massachusetts Farm to School. It is Massachusetts Farm to School Month, and from the Northampton Public Schools, we've got Mistel Hanna, who's the School Nutrition Director, who's given us these wonderful field pea falafel.
Is it terrible that I still want to call you our favorite advocacy Pokemon?
Oh yeah, because Abby Getman-Skillicorn sounds like it could be a Pokemon name.
I will take
Solid.
that. That might need to be my Halloween costume this year.
Take it, run with it. It's yours.
Thank you.
Abby, we have had you on before, but tell us what Massachusetts Farm to School is and does.
Thanks, Monty, and thanks, Khalees, for having us. We are delighted to be celebrating Massachusetts Farm to School Month, and as an organization, we're an over 20-year-old organization that works to strengthen our communities, local farms, and fisheries by supporting more local foods in schools and more education about growing food and eating food here in Massachusetts.
How are we doing?
We're doing really well.
I think we
have
had you
to
on
say.
about a year ago, and it's been a tough time for making sure people have enough to eat, especially when you're trying to do this in a public school setting, one of our great socialist endeavors in the United States of America.
I'm not going to participate in this interview. I'm just going to eat all the snacks.
You keep eating. But how is Massachusetts doing, and how is it doing compared to maybe other states?
Yeah, I would say that Massachusetts is doing well. We are really proud of the fact that we have universal free meals, and that initiative has really leveled the playing field for all schools and eaters so that kids aren't facing a stigma by going through the lunch line in order to select their options. And I think if anything, the cuts at the federal level have really bolstered a lot of support here statewide. So we currently have an active bill in the state legislature that would establish a farm to school program, which Senator Comerford, Senator Gomez, and Senator Oliveira and Rep. Duffy have really championed. That bill would really codify the farm to school grant program, of which Northampton Public Schools has received some funding for, as well as establish a local food incentive so so that schools would receive a rebate on investments in local food purchases that they make for their meal programs. So last month, Senate members of the Education Committee unanimously passed this bill out of the Education Committee, and House members are still considering the bill. So fortunately, here in Western Mass, most of our delegation has really rallied and really supported this initiative. What we would say is call your state representatives and thank them for their support, and really encourage them to get this bill passed so it can pass this session.
Are there members of the delegation that aren't supporting it in the Western Mass?
In Western Mass, Senator Vilas and Senator Mark haven't signed on, but again, since the bill's already passed the Senate, we just have to get it through the House, and we have really strong support from our Western Mass delegation.
Interesting.
It sounds like the school equivalent of HIP, actually.
Yes. And I would say, if anything, it's like both the school equivalent of HIP and SNAP education, because the Farm to School grant program really allows schools to apply for funds to develop more professional development for their school kitchen staff, knife skills training, scalable recipes, incorporating local foods, or let's add some hydroponics program, and hydroponics towers to our schools, or getting students out on farm field trips like Springfield and Holyoke have been doing with the Western Mass Food Bank.
Is it terrible that I'm horrified just by the thought of you have people working in kitchens with no knife skill? What?
Well, I would say that, we experience the realities of having eliminated certain things from our public education, like cooking education. Mm-hmm. And
Fair.
I think that many folks might have home cooking skills, and to be able to really use...
It's a different muscle.
It's a different muscle, and being able to use knives safely for longer periods of time, or being able to scale recipes to instead of feeding 400 people can be really different. And so I think investing in that professional development education for our school nutrition staff, they're professionals. They should receive training so that they can do what they're doing really well. And
Agreed.
We've seen that investment, pulling in folks from Project Bread or the John Stalker Institute to do that on-site cooking training with staff to be really instrumental. We've also seen funds used to do early literacy programs with teachers, getting all the teachers together to do a read aloud, session and train the trainer on how they can, weave through lessons from a book that they might be reading with their preschoolers, like here in Holyoke, Chicopee, Springfield Head Start, and then actually building a container garden with their kiddos, and then getting to sample and eat those herbs that their kids are growing in their classroom. So, it's a multifunctional grant that's not exclusive to just one section. We realize Farm to School is really a holistic methodology that needs the classroom, the cafeteria, and the community to be really successful. And I think Northampton really does that well.
That's Abby Getman-Skillicorn, who's Special Projects Manager for Massachusetts Farm to School. It is Farm to School Month. And as Abby mentioned, we're joined by Ms. Stell Hanna, who's the School Nutrition Director from Northampton Public Schools, and who's received some of these grants, and who's brought us this incredible field pea falafel. How's it going eating all that with the hummus, Cleese?
Not putting mouse downs into the knife.
Oh, now you've got now carrots here as well, which I'm going to dig into, while you tell us, Ms. Stell, how you're collaborating with both CISA and Massachusetts Farm to School and using some of these grants to get farm fresh stuff into the mouths of kids in the Northampton Public School system.
Yes, well, we are very grateful to be recipients of the Mass Fresh grant, in that we've worked really hard to kind of integrate those 3 C's that Abby was speaking of, the community, classroom, cafeteria, into our
carrots.
district. And carrots. Those are Hadley carrots from Joe Sykowski's farm.
Sykowski, another C.
And so as far as bringing in for the cafeteria, we are doing monthly taste tests with our students that align with the Harvest of the Month from Mass Farm to School. And so students are really kind of expressing their voices and choices about what they want to see on the menu when they're trying these new foods. And then we implement it onto the menu. A popular one was a ham, spinach, and apple wrap. So the spinach and apples were local. They tested it out. Now it's a fan favorite. Mm-hmm. In the classroom, we were able to launch our Fresh Kids programming, which is quite unique. It's along with School Sprouts. So every elementary school student gets in-class nutrition education essentially, with hands-on developing recipes with local food. So even down to kindergartners, they're making tea bags and herb satchels. And then the upper grades kind of do a transitional recipe. So they grind wheat into flour, they make dough. And then we have been just recently collecting all of the tomatoes from the school gardens and freezing them. And so they'll be processing them into tomato sauce for their pizzas along the way in the winter.
Fun.
And then in the end, they make their own pizza. We established some great connections within the community. We work closely with Grow Food Northampton. And so they enable field trips both in the fall and the spring for all of our students. And so they're really learning about where their food's coming from. They're getting hands-on in there with the compost. They're growing food, seeing how climate change has affected our local farmers firsthand. And so that's been great. And then we're also just launching this year through that funding an internship program for both our middle school and high school student where they're going to learn about hydroponic growing. We're able to purchase grow towers from Fork Farms. And so they will be growing seed starts for lettuce, and that will go directly into the cafeteria for their own salad.
Boy, I would have loved to learn hydroponic growing when I was in school. Just like I learned glass blowing. What other things could we translate it to? Who knows? But for now, it's about farm to school. And it's happening in Northampton and all across the Commonwealth.
And some lessons learned, I would say, Monty, back to your earlier question about how is Massachusetts doing. One of the devastating cuts we experienced recently with the federal government was they canceled the Local Food for Schools program. And when Massachusetts received that funding initially in 2023, we had $3.5 million, which schools like Northampton and, Springfield, Chicopee, Holyoke, others used that money to buy local foods. And statewide, what we saw, while the definition allowed for any purchases within 400 miles to count as a local purchase, 67% of funds, school nutrition directors around the state decided we want these dollars to stay in Massachusetts. So that was, over $2.5 million that was really staying here in Massachusetts with Massachusetts carrots, like, you're sampling today. We definitely saw local ground meat, direct from farmers. Local fish was another element that folks were adding to the menu. So not just your apples or carrots, but school nutrition directors, adding local cheese, different things depending on what their students really wanted to be seeing or what nutrition directors were identifying that would really elevate the quality of their meals. So, Ms. Dell, do you want to tell us about some of the other local foods that you've decided to start purchasing regularly once you were able to try them out with your students?
So definitely, we started with the Hadley carrots. So we were buying baby carrots from our vendor, which they're okay, right? But these are so much better. Through using that funding, we decided we're going to still keep it. And so now we're just consistently building that relationship with our local farmer for local carrots consistently throughout the way. We also chose apples. Apples are very popular in schools. We serve apples every day. And so now we're buying all of our apples locally. And other things we started trying through that incentive was the Mighty Mill bagels. Students love them. And so while we don't do it as frequently as we were before, we still feature those bagels regularly.
And that's a stone ground organic bagel that's manufactured in Lynn using Northeast grown grains.
And that's Abby Getman-Skillicorn from Massachusetts Farm to School and Ms. Stella Hanna from the Northampton Public Schools, the nutrition director. Claire Morneau from CISA. How does CISA get involved in Massachusetts Farm to School Month, which is this month?
CISA and the Mass Farm to School project were founded by similar people. There was some overlap in terms of our founding. So I think Kelly Irwin was on CISA's board for a bunch of years. I would say that, CISA and Mass Farm to School are two different ways of approaching a shared problem. Like, our actual ways of working don't overlap a ton, but we're both focused on how do we build a stronger local food system. And so for CISA, a lot of that work is about how do we encourage the general public to choose local food when they're at the grocery store? How do we encourage people to sign up for CSAs or go to the farmer's market, that sort of thing? Mass Farm to School is focused on this entire other huge place that people eat food, which is schools. So we'll refer farms to each other and that sort of thing. But I would say that our core ways of working are kind of different, even though we're working on the same issues.
And in some ways, I would say CISA is a real partner to Mass Farm to School because of the very intimate ties with local farmers. The farms that are really looking to scale and do wholesale type delivery are good partners for a lot of schools. CISA is a much larger organization than Mass Farm to School, so some of the resources that they have in order to stay in touch with different producers in the area has really helped Mass Farm to School identify farms that could be good partners for different schools in their area.
Can I also say, are we an incubator ourselves?
I believe so.
So you're raising baby chicks as well.
Baby farms. We've seen 2 of them this year.
Abby herself is a former CISA staff person.
I'm a CISA alum. That's true.
And Mistel
Was a
I
former
was
intern
reminded.
in my past life.
And CISA, again, it's community involved in sustaining agriculture, if you don't know what that is. We always say the local hero, folks. But yes, it has made major impacts and inroads into creating a stronger local food system.
The last time that we talked to you, it was when the federal cuts happened. And I was wondering if Claire or my favorite Pokemon, Miss Gillicorn, have noticed amongst farmers an impact similar to what happened when the HIP cuts happened.
So what I will say is that some of the benefits of the Northeast Food for Schools program was that it introduced different wholesale food items to schools, and many of them have continued to source those items. Like Mistel has switched to Hadley grown carrots, period. Like she's not getting any baby carrots. So that is a switch that she's been able to sustain because of universal free meals. What I will say is we saw a real challenge for the distributors. So the Worcester Food Hub, for example, did a lot of distribution for the Northeast Food for Schools program, and a lot of schools were really excited to partner with them as a distributor, and they work with over 50 farms to source the foods for those orders, and they have ceased their school sales this year because of the federal cuts. So we know that that's at least $1 million of local foods that was previously going to schools that is not getting there through that distributor.
There were cuts, not to move the conversation away from just schools, but there were also cuts to programs that were enabling food banks to purchase food directly from local farms. So between the cuts to both of those programs on both the food bank side and the farm to school side, we have heard from farms in our region who were planning on selling significant amounts of produce into either of those programs, who didn't have backup markets in place. You know, farms tend to be pretty adaptable, and the seasons vary so much from year to year in terms of how much they're going to produce, and they have to be flexible in terms of figuring out, like, oh, we're having a bumper crop of tomatoes this year, so where are we going to sell it? And I think many of them have adapted in the way that they always do, depending on the season. But I would say having, you know, millions of dollars that people were expecting to be able to sell their products into these two markets has definitely impacted some local farms.
And I'll say on another federal cut that I think is definitely impacting schools as well would be the SNAP education cut. So different schools partner. Like here in Springfield, they partner with UMass Nutrition Extension to provide nutrition education classes to elementary school students. And with those SNAP education cuts, that's really undermined the ability for those programs to go into schools. That's where Mass Farm to School sees the importance of our Farm to School bill in infusing funds to allow those types of educational programs to continue. We know that putting a local carrot in front of a student isn't enough. We need to educate them about where it comes from and why that's important for our climate as well as for our economy. And we also know that it takes kids many times to try things before they decide that they like it. Sometimes past 10 times it'll take for them to try something before they decide they like it. And when programs are able to do things like taste tests, they're growing adventurous eaters. And when kids are, you know, really enabled or really encouraged to take an I tried it bite, you know, time after time after time, by the time that they're going from kindergarten to first grade, they might actually be enjoying, you know, those things rather than just trying something to get a sticker or to be able to put a cube in a basket to tell them that they voted. And I think that that's where, you know, under Mistel's leadership, Northampton is one of the programs around the state that's doing a really great job implementing regular taste tests with students. And Mistel and Chicopee, along with our Department of Education, will be presenting at the National Farm to School Conference in New Mexico in December.
Wow. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. We're excited. We're going to be presenting not only about our programs, but we're also going to be able to teach and support other schools across the country about how to implement and integrate a sustainable farm to school program. It's an exercise where we split up our audience into separate groups, and then we present them with the challenges that come up, where that being cost or labor. If you want a farm to school coordinator, how are you going to implement a new position and kind of give them the tasks of trying to work out those knots to kind of have a sustainable program.
You know, it takes a village to really figure these things out, and Ms. Dell will be joined by Brianna Jackson and Ms. Brian Jersky. Yep, and I would also say Melanie from Chicopee. You know, they're doing really fabulous work and thinking creatively about how to make this programming happen and how to make it cross the silos that can be built in our educational institutions. So it's not just food service that's really trying to get these things done.
Yes. Ms. Dell, is this your first time going to something like this and presenting at something like this?
No, we actually presented this very same, I think at the Northeast Conference in Portland, Maine in April. We were just talking about that on the way here.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we're taking it on the road.
Because they all carpooled, by the way, which is great.
Yeah, we did. So, yeah, we're taking it on the road. We're going to New Mexico in December, and it's pretty exciting.
How different did you see, like, your program from the other programs that people were leading at the conference you went to?
There's a lot of differences. The main conference was more on the Farm to Institute. So there was a lot of different levels of folks, whether they were working with prison systems or other educational or restaurants and things like
hospitals.
that. There were hospitals, yes, and things. A lot of the barriers are different just on the districts, too, where we have universal free meals here in Massachusetts. And so our program is much different. What I did find is a lot of people just trying to, like, what I always say, eat the whale all at one sitting. I once had a mentor that shared that, always telling me, you can't eat the whale in one sitting. I'm
I
like,
don't
who's
know if
eating
that's
whale?
allowed in Massachusetts farm to school at this point.
Local fish.
400 years ago? I think maybe.
But just doing the tiny things and making a bigger impact. And so just kind of talking with them about how to do those little things and wait for the bigger change over time. But yeah, I'm excited because everybody in the nation that has an opportunity to go to this conference will have so many chances to really learn from them as well about the differences.
Well, there might not be local whale on the menu in Massachusetts schools. There's certainly local haddock or fluke, you know, or monkfish that are hitting school lunch trays.
Yay for monkfish in schools.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Claire Morneau from CISA.
I want to ask about barriers. I feel like school lunch kind of has a bad reputation, and I think that is because a lot of the school food that maybe our generation grew up on. And I think it's useful for people to understand some of the constraints that school feeding programs are working within. Budgets, sometimes infrastructure, even the nutritional requirements can be something to work around. I'm curious to have either or both of you speak around some of the
You mean it wasn't just bad because we had a president who thought that ketchup was a vegetable?
Well, and so
Ketchup is no longer a vegetable under USDA rules, which we are very happy about.
The no longer should not have ever needed to be a part of this sentence.
Exactly.
Well, and, you know, change takes time. Big shout out to Michelle Obama and the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, because when that passed in 2010, that really set a lot of wheels in motion that have allowed things like ketchup no longer to be a vegetable, the farm to school grants to exist, and the community eligibility provision, which allowed high need districts to get universal free meals, you know, then tip the scales to allow Massachusetts to believe in the importance of universal free meals for all.
But what about Claire's question there, Ms. Dell, from Northampton Public Schools, the nutrition director there?
So actually in Northampton, I was constantly receiving feedback from parents asking these questions. Why aren't you doing this? Why don't we see this? And so we actually launched 2 years ago a program called Reveal the Meal. And it just kind of is an informational. So we started setting up booths at all sorts of conferences and things like that, just talking about school meals and who
Back
makes
to
those
school night, you know, at the
open house bus
kindergarten registration.
training. We're everywhere and giving away our swag and snacks where we always have our Fresh Hampton hummus, just so that folks will come over and talk to us and we can tell them and let them know. The biggest barrier is reimbursement. We are reimbursed for each lunch that we're served just under $5. That has to cover the cost of all of the food items that are required under the components for USDA, as well as the labor to prepare said food, the paper, the equipment repair, all of those things fall under that $4.73 or 74 cents to be exact. And the same thing for breakfast and snack. They each have their own reimbursement, and you really have to work to make sure you're meeting it underneath that, because you also want to pay a fair wage to your employees who are preparing those meals. It's also the time frame. A lot of individuals don't realize that our staff are coming in the morning and making breakfast for 200 students, and an hour and a half later they're feeding lunch to said 200 students. And so it's a very quick turnaround. The from scratch has to be a particular item. It can't be the whole entire meal due to that time frame. And so those are really some of the bigger barriers, because then you're looking to get some more, convenient type foods, Our pizza will be a frozen pizza, but it's whole grain, low sodium, and low fat. We're not making that from scratch. It's a favorite.
And facilities. Some in Massachusetts, many of our school buildings are older, and they were not necessarily built at a time when school lunch was happening. So sometimes your kitchens are really maybe in the hallway. Not in Northampton public schools, they have kitchens and cafeterias, but they were maybe built at a time when, okay, some kids were eating school lunch, but not most kids eating school lunch, and certainly not breakfast. So even when you're thinking about the infrastructure of being able to add another walk-in refrigerator or a stand-up freezer, in some of our buildings, their electrical loads may or may not be able to handle that. And so we have seen with some of the state investment, like the Food Insecurity Infrastructure Grant that's gone to help schools build more robust kitchens or add transportation, that some of the facility upgrades that they'd like to do in order to buy more local foods or make more scratch cooking can really be a barrier to allowing them to just have the facilities and the storage that are needed.
And that's kind of also where that Northeast Food for Schools funding, the local food incentives, was so detrimental, is that it actually was the first time we were allotted funds to buy food and keep it local and see the nutritional quality increase and it be foods our students really enjoyed without impacting that reimbursement dollar. And so it was very valuable.
And it is now currently gone, and I wonder how long it will be before it comes back, if ever, as with so many of these things that have gone by the wayside from the federal government, including Corporation for Public Broadcasting money, as we mentioned many times, funds for SNAP, funds for the food banks. Meanwhile, we do have a robust infrastructure and community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is celebrating Farm to School Month this month.
If folks want to get involved, they can certainly go to massfarmtoschool.org to find out more. We offer a program called Harvest of the Month, both for educators and for school nutrition programs. So if there are any educators listening and they want to receive a monthly newsletter to their inbox and learn about different crops that they could teach their students about, be it history, weaving it into their history lessons, science, or math, we're happy to have you sign up online at massfarmtoschool.org.
And that's Abby Getman-Skillicorn, who's the Special Projects Manager at Massachusetts Farm to School. And we've been joined by Miss Stell Hanna, who's the School Nutrition Director from the Northampton Public Schools, and Claire Morneau from CISA, the local hero folks who are helping to support lots of our local farms in the 413. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Back to the ground-up pea falafel.
That's right. And if folks are looking for, you're hearing, wow, Northampton's doing this awesome work, and you want to hear or learn about what your school nutrition departments are doing, all public school departments post their menus online, and they're required to have their food service department contact online. And so look for your student menus. Many of them are adding identifiers of what they're serving that's local. And at the very least, you can get contact information to learn how you can support your nutrition departments, which first and foremost, it's getting the students to eat meals.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Estelle, as from your perspective in the schools, how would you encourage people to
have your students eat school meals? That is the best way to make an impact in the school nutrition program.
No more brown bag.
That's also fine, but they're free, so engage.
Yes, you can have both.
They were wicked tasty.
Yes, they were. The staff here had them as well.
Yes.
And the hummus was good too. There are longer versions of all of our conversations today, including with Mass Farm to School Month, including with author from Amherst, Catherine Newman, and including mayoral candidate for East Hampton, Lindsay Sekula, that you'll be able to check out on the Fabulous 413 podcast later today.
On the next Fabulous 413, we meet the last of the East Hampton mayoral candidates, J.T. Terrell, a current counselor at large for the city and the only East Hampton native on the ballot.
We'll also head to Smith College Museum of Art, where curator April Gallant shows us a new exhibit examining the massive body of work of Cameroon photographer Michel Kameni.
And word nerd Emily Brewster shows us how Gutenberg is related to some assumptions you might make about the world as we look at the origins of the word stereotype.
If you have a question for the word nerd, you can send it our way, thefab413@anypm.org, and we'd be happy to ask our dictionary up the road in Springfield on your behalf.
We genuinely love that, so please do. I'm Khalees Smith.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
We'll talk to you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.